everybody. Dwight Moody coming to you from the meeting house on what certainly is a very black day in American history. This past week, we celebrated the July 4th holiday. I hope you were safe and sound and were with people who liked you. But this 4th of July will be remembered for decades as a black day in American history. First of all, the devastating floods that swept through central Texas. What a tragedy this is. As of this morning, 51 people, bodies have been recovered, and they're still searching for many of those teenagers who are attending that Camp Mystic there in central Texas. This is a great tragedy. You know, this happened once before in 1987 where there was a body count, but this is many times worse than that. And our hearts and support go out to all of the people who are working in recovery, families, specialists, the National Guard. This is going to be a long time in recovering what has happened there in central Texas. But we want you to know, Texas, that the United States, the people, we are everywhere standing with you, and we're going to find ways to help, send people, send money, support the organizations like the Red Cross and FEMA that are going to come to your rescue. But the 4th of July was also a black day because of that big black bill which the Republican Congress passed and the President signed on July 4th. This is a terrible bill. Even Republican senators who voted for it knew it was bad. I think about Lisa Murkowski. She could have been a hero for the American people. Do you remember what John McCain did? What was that, 10 years ago when a similar Congress tried to overturn and throw out and negate the Affordable Care Act? John McCain, in one of the great acts of his distinguished career, walked to the front of the Senate chamber and did this. Surprised everybody. But that simple gesture, that act of courage, saved the Affordable Care Act, what we know as Obamacare. Lisa Murkowski could have been that savior for America this week. Actually, any number of senators could have and should have. Lisa Murkowski worked a behind-the-scenes deal to protect her people from the worst parts of this bill, knowing that those same provisions were going to bring havoc and chaos and despair to many Americans. Shame on Lisa Murkowski. She needs to be defeated when we come to vote. She's up for re-election next year. It's been a black day, but here we are, Sunday in the house. I want to bring a message of hope. I want to light a candle of hope in this dark time. I want to say something that will encourage you about how we can be strong and helpful and stay steady to our values in this really terrible time in our nation's history. I'm Dwight A. Moody, your host. We're going to have a red letter lesson here in just a minute. With me as my special guest in just a few minutes to read the scripture and talk with me about our red letter lesson is my grandson, Samuel Wyatt Curson. He's a 17-year-old high school senior, and for those of you who don't know him, you'll meet him here shortly. But I want to say this. You know, here's the latest version of the sign from Micah 6:8. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. And what I want to say, as you know, I've been using this as a way to organize and interpret what we mean by living a Christian life. Right here at the center, we are to walk humbly with God. That's a reference to our life in Christ. It's a reference to us connecting with the mystery of the universe, the spirit that pervades everything. The next circle is that we are to love mercy. This has to do with the way we connect with the people that we meet, friends and strangers, our family, the people that we shop with and eat with, people that we like and even people that we don't like, how we are to live with mercy and compassion and empathy and forgiveness and generosity, everybody that we meet. Our lesson, our red letter lesson today is going to illustrate this in the life of Jesus. And then on the outer circle, in a way that touches everybody around the world, we are to do justice, to pursue justice, to love justice, to vote justice, so that everybody in the world, all colors, all creeds, all religions, all languages, the rich and the poor, that we all have an opportunity to be safe, to thrive, to be successful, to live in a just society where we are protected from all the wickedness that's in the world. Now, several of you have written here you want either note cards or T-shirts with this on it. I'm going to try to make that happen, and I will let you know how that comes about in just a minute. You know, frequently here in the house, I will tell you that we, as American people, we need to march. I've got my marching sign back there, less Trump, more Jesus. You can make one like that as well, less Trump and more Jesus. I've encouraged you to boycott, to join boycotts against corporations and events that do not support the democracy and freedom in the United States. I've encouraged you to join a strike. Now, we haven't had one yet, but before long there's going to be a general strike. There's going to be a call to shut down everything, to protest what this regime is doing to deny due process, to pick on people of color. This regime loves the white and hates the brown and the black. Then I've encouraged you to vote. Every time you get a chance to vote, you vote for local elections, for national elections, so that we make our vote count as we pull the country back from this deep, darkness into which we have entered. And then, of course, to pray. Jesus prayed for his country. The Bible teaches us to pray for our leaders, our governors, our mayors, our president, our senators, our judges. They need to do what is right and be fair for the people. Pray for them. But today I want to suggest that there are some other ways that you can cultivate a sense of hope and encouragement and keep alive a delight in life, even in the midst of these dark times. Here they are. There are 5 things I'm going to encourage you to do. I try to do them, and I want to encourage you to do them. Simple things. Number 1, take a walk in the woods. Now this week, my grandson and my wife and I, we took a long walk here in the mountains of South Carolina. I think it was about 1.5 miles each way over to a beautiful waterfalls. And, it does the spirit good, whether you're walking on a trail. And I want to say that one of the greatest things that's happening in the United States is what's called rails to trails, the taking of the old railroad beds that are flat and easy to walk and turning them into trails for people. You find one near you. You get involved in one of the organizations that's making this happen where you are. A walk in the woods. Number 2, a morning at the market. I am sure that where you are, there's a farmer's market. Now, I try to go to the farmer's market every Saturday morning, and sometimes even on Wednesday evening when we have a smaller market. Here, people from all over the area, they bring their homegrown goods, homegrown foods, We had a long talk yesterday with a man who has a bison farm near here, and we resolved to go up and buy some of his product, which is high in protein, low in fat bison. I'll report on that later. I bought a piece of artwork, and we bought some corn on the cob and shucked it right there. You find a market where you can go. It'll do your community good. Number 3, take a day and go to a festival. One of the big movements, again, in modern American culture that's just really wonderful are the festivals that are sponsored all over the country. It seems like every little community is having a festival full of music, full of food. People come and have set up their booths and sell things. People bring their whole families and walk up and down the streets. These festivals sometimes are driven by music. And this is a good thing. Find a festival and support it. Set up your own booth. I think I'm going to set up a meeting house booth, not this coming week, but maybe the following week at our market. Number 4, help keep our sanity, to help the light shine, to create a crack in the dark dome that's been laid over our country. Find a seat at a concert. Find a seat at a concert. Now, this past weekend, this past 4th of July, of course, there was the big concert on the National Mall, singing patriotic songs. It's always a big deal. When I was in college we lived in St. Louis. We would cross the Missouri River over the Ohio River over into Edwardsville, where Edwardsville had a big outdoor amphitheater, and the St. Louis Symphony would come out there and play. I heard Van Cliburn play out there one summer. These kinds of concerts, in just, I think it's 4 weeks, some friends of mine are putting on a concert of John Prine music just up the road in Hendersonville, North Carolina. You can bet that I'm going to have a seat right there listening to some of the best music everywhere. Find a concert, small, large. Let the music soak into your soul. It'll make you feel good, and it'll help remind you of the values that we treasure here in the United States. And number 5, find a game. Go to a game. Buy a ticket to a game. It's baseball season. One of the great minor league ball teams is down the Savannah Bananas. Some of you live down there. And they have broken new ground on how to be an entertaining presence, a minor league team putting on a show for the community. Find a baseball, find a soccer, find a basketball. I'm ready for football. Are you? I want football to start. High school, college, professional football. Games, watching games, playing games is a good thing. It makes us active, helps us to cheer, keeps us fit. Well, for the longest time, we only had 3. There was baseball, basketball, and football. But now look at all the sports that are out there. As a pastor for many years, I watched as soccer crept into Sunday morning, taking over the Sunday morning schedule for lots of families. I don't even mind that. You can go to church lots. You can even watch church online. Kids need soccer. Soccer is a great sport. I'm glad that at least 2 of my children played soccer when we lived down in Owensboro, Kentucky. Okay, so there are 5 things. These are things that you can do, that I can do. A walk in the woods, morning at the market, a day at the festival, a seat at the concert, a date for the game. I'm going to take a little break now. Introduce you, I think, to a squirrel, and we'll be back with the red letter lesson.
My name is Samuel. This is my grandfather here. And I'm going to read Luke chapter 7, the faith of a Roman officer. When Jesus had finished saying all this to the people, he returned to Capernaum. At that time, the highly valued slave of a Roman officer was sick and near death. When the officer heard about Jesus, he sent some respected Jewish elders to ask him to come and heal his slave. So they earnestly begged Jesus to help the man. "If anyone deserves your help, he does," they said, "for he loves the Jewish people and even built a synagogue for us." So Jesus went with them. But just before they arrived at the house, the officer sent some friends to say, "Lord, don't trouble yourself by coming to my home, for I am not worthy of such an honor. I am not even worthy to come and meet you. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. He turned to the crowd that was following him and said, "I tell you, I haven't seen faith like this in all of Israel." And when the officer's friends returned to his house, they found the slave completely healed. Now, I think at the core of this story, it's talking about the faith of the Roman officer and salvation through faith. Now, a part here I didn't understand at first, where it's saying, "I know this because I'm under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers." What it's doing is it's comparing the authority of the Roman officer to the authority of Jesus to cast out sickness. What do you think, Papa?
Well, I think you're right about the core of the story, about the faith of that centurion, but the text which you read says that Jesus was amazed. He perhaps was used to Jewish people who shared his religion of having faith, but here was a centurion, a Roman soldier. We don't know where he was from. He could have been from any part of the Roman Empire and conscripted into the Roman army, because the Roman army occupied Jerusalem and Judea at the time. That is, the Jewish people lived in an occupied country. They had to pay taxes. They had to treat the Romans with respect. They had to stay clear of the Romans because the Romans, they were armed people. They had authority. They could arrest people. They could put them in jail. And as Jesus eventually found out, they could kill you, because it was the Roman soldiers in cahoots with the Jewish religious leaders that conspired to arrest Jesus when they were convinced he was a troublemaker and a threat to their power. The Romans liked their own authority and their power. When they thought Jesus was not just healing the sick, but when they thought he was challenging their political party, they acted against him. They arrested him at night, put him on a cross, and killed him. Famously, one of the most famous stories in all the world, the crucifixion of Jesus. But I think what we need to pay attention to here is Jesus dealing with a military person who was dressed and equipped as a soldier, how Jesus dealt with him. That soldier was a threat to Jesus. He was a threat to arrest him. But Jesus overlooked all of that and noticed his faith, had compassion on this man who was his natural opposition. He noticed that the man was just a person underneath all the armor, underneath the sword he was carrying. He was a person who loved his son and deserved the compassion and mercy of God. So, what did Jesus do? He unleashed all the healing power of God into the life of not only the man, but also his son who was deathly ill. And that power healed the boy. I think this teaches us something here in the United States today. What do you think it teaches us?
It's a good question. What do I think it teaches us?
Here we are, we've got ICE people running around, masks
Yeah.
on their face, guns around, wanting to arrest people.
I think that Jesus, he chose forgiveness
He did.
over fear.
He did.
And the soldier chose faith over fear.
He did. They both did.
And I think that's the choice we need to make. I think we need to, instead of being suspicious, instead of being apprehensive, we need to do what we think is right.
We need to treat everybody as a person who has aspirations, who has value, and many of whom have faith, who are looking for God. And here we are, we want to encourage them. So here we are, we think, as I've said earlier in this program, that we live in a dark time. In America, we're living in a dark time. And we feel occupied by this army called ICE that has just been given in this big black bill that was passed and signed billions and billions and billions of dollars.
And there will be times when we think that, what can we do? They have so much authority, so much power over us. But we have to remember that even in the city of Jerusalem, the Roman fortress where the soldiers were garrisoned was even higher than the temple. But God is even higher than that.
Yeah, you're talking about the fortress Antonia, which sat right next to the temple. Actually, it was raised above it where the soldiers could keep watch over all the Jewish people, prevent the kind of rebellion that happened in Jewish life frequently. But Jesus' whole ministry was lived in a time of occupation, when his own people, the Jewish people, what we know as the people of God in that day, had to live and move and have their being and worship God in the midst of an occupying army, where they always had to be careful.
And I think we can learn something from that. That Jesus taught forgiveness, taught compassion, even when they were being oppressed. Even in a time of occupation and oppression, Jesus advocated for forgiveness and mercy.
You know, this reminds me of the great civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King, who advocated and practiced nonviolence even against the people who were being violent. And that we were to treat even our oppressor with the dignity that every person is due. One of the interesting things that's happening right now is that not everybody who started off enthusiastic about this new regime in our country has maintained their enthusiasm. As a matter of fact, there is a website called leavingmaga.org where people are trying to pull out of the MAGA movement. People are trying to ease out of their support. They're trying to step out of the parade being led by Mr. Trump. They don't really want to be a part of all of this. Here is an interesting thing. You know, they built that alligator Alcatraz right down there in the midst of the Everglades in Florida, and they went down there with the spirit of cruelty and domination. But do you know, they tell us it took them only 8 days to build that entire facility. Now I wonder how quickly these same people are going to respond to the people in Central Texas who are going to need things rebuilt, things brought in, food and water and shelter brought in. Are they going to be as quick to take care of the human need in Central Texas as they have been to build a cage down there in the middle of alligator country. One of them will express their compassion for the people who are hurting in Central Texas, just like what they're building down there in alligator country expresses the cruelty and the meanness that they have toward people of color, brown people.
And rather than building a prison, we should build a school. Rather than building a fortress, we should build a church. That's what I think.
And hospitals and parks and amphitheaters where we can have concerts.
Ice skating rinks.
And have ball games
Ball
and
games.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who needs more cages in America, right?
Yeah, we need more football fields, is what we need.
I agree with that. Sam, I want to thank you for being in the house this Sunday, and you'll have to come back as soon as we can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. God bless you. I'll be back in just a minute to wrap up our Sunday in the house today. Thank you for joining us today. You know, each week I talk about what's happening in the public life in America. I draw attention to the chaos and the confusion, even the cruelty, as we were just talking about these cages that have been built down in Florida. I talk about the corruption and the greed. I think it's important that everybody, especially ministers of the gospel, confront this blanket, this dome of darkness that is settling over our country. And I want to keep a bright light burning here in the house. I want to thank you for joining us this week. I want to thank my grandson. He may be back with me next week. We're leaving in the morning to head towards St. Louis to go up in the arch and ride on the riverboat and explore the Indian mounds just across the river, maybe take in the wonderful world-class zoo that they have there in St. Louis. But all along the way, I want to encourage you to tune in. This voice in the house is very important. There are bigger voices that are speaking words of criticism and confusion and chaos. I think about this is what happened this week. The federal government has for years given grants to organizations all over the country to support their summer camps and feed especially poor people. On June the 30th, this week, they canceled all of those. Now think about what that does to summer programs. A reasonable, sympathetic government, if they wanted to do this, would have sent out the word, next year we're going to delete these grants and give people a full year to find alternative funding. But no, that's not what happened. That's the kind of darkness that many ordinary people are dealing with this week. I ask you to pray for me, pray for these organizations that have lost their support, pray for the people in Kerr, Texas, all up along that river valley where they're still finding bodies. You find a place where you can send some money. You pray for them every day. You support, as you can, the recovery there. I encourage you to write me. I hear from my audience every single day of the week, and I encourage you to write or call or text me, post something on Facebook. Thank you for being a part of my family every Sunday in the house. I am Dwight A. Moody, your host for Sunday in the House. I will see you again next week.